didn't anticipate that I would do a video like this, but a YouTuber that goes by the name of Innuendo Studios made a new video called the Alt-Right Playbook Introduction. I wanted to take a minute to examine it and offer my take. The video starts with a trigger warning.
Say, for the sake of argument, you run a modestly successful YouTube channel, and given the current political reality, you're thinking of doing some videos on the alt-right. Let's say you've been trying to understand the alt-right for some time, and would like to do a series that tackles the big questions. What are the rhetorical strategies the alt-right uses to legitimize itself and gain power? How do these strategies work? Why do they work? How do we keep from falling for them? And, importantly, how do we catch ourselves when we start using them too?
To start, Innuendo Studios already acts as if alt-right views are irrelevant and only effective using rhetorical strategies, that they don't stand on their own 2 feet and are without merit. If I believe something, it doesn't require rhetorical strategy, and me expressing those beliefs is not rhetorical strategy, but me expressing those beliefs.
You're thinking of calling this series the Alt-Right Playbook. Setting aside that any lefty who makes a YouTube series with alt-right in the title will see their life go to hell, there are 3 things you'd have to clarify from the get-go. First, what is the alt-right? For clarity's sake, you'd have to tell people that the alt-right is a pack of loosely aligned groups and individuals that have existed for quite a while at the peripheries of American conservatism, but have recently gained footholds in the Republican Party proper.
Correct. Very much in the same way communists, Marxists, and postmodernists have infiltrated media, academia, and the Democratic Party.
The term alt-right implies more or less what you think it would, positioning themselves as the young, edgy nirvana to the antiquated motley crew of 70s and 80s conservatism. They seek to replace and critique the likes of Barry Goldwater and Ronald Reagan for being, let's not mince words here, not reactionary enough.
No one believes that these people weren't reactionary enough. In fact, back then, there wasn't a need to be reactionary in the same way there is today. Everyone more or less fit into the same ideological bubble with minor squabbles, and Americanism was the law of the land. There was not a full-fledged assault on academia, patriotism, and our basic rights, not to mention blatant anti-white racism, every day, everywhere.
The alt-right, the people who adopt the label and those who just parrot their talking points, has high overlap with white supremacist think tank the National Policy Institute, Stormfront and the Ku Klux Klan, Breitbart News and various sections of 4chan, 8chan, and Reddit.
There's nothing wrong with patronizing the groups that you mention. Breitbart reports some quality news sometimes, so does CNN, so does NBC, so does Fox News. NPI can do the same. Occasionally, they put out some really good content. I haven't met anyone that unironically likes the KKK. Yes, many of us are on Reddit, 4chan, 8chan, and other sites. We're also on Vote. We're also on Gab.ai. We're also on Twitter. So we're communists, Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, anarchists, atheists, devout Catholics. That's not a problem.
Sections of the asshole atheist community.
Asshole atheist community? This is where you've officially gone off the rails, Innuendo. Atheists are, in fact, a vast minority in the alt-right. One of the foundational beliefs pervasive in the alt-right is that traditional values are informed by religion and by culture, and that any member of the movement should find religion, be it paganism, Catholicism, Protestantism, or anything. Religion, it is believed correctly, is a means of communing with your neighbors in a positive way and networking while also satisfying your own personal spiritual development.
Anti-feminist YouTube, pickup artists and rape apologists, the not all men, all lives matter and Gamergate crowds, and basically anyone who uses the terms social justice warrior or virtue signaling unironically.
Anti-feminist? Not so much. Anti-Marxist, anti-postmodernist? Definitely. Rape apologists? Again, not so much. There are always some edgelords who make rape jokes, but there are those in any community. I've seen it myself in communist communities. MGTOW and pickup artists is simply patently false. You cannot say that you believe in traditional Western values while also encouraging degeneracy in the form of promiscuity and excessive drinking or casual sex. The two are irreconcilable. Did many people in the alt-right come from MGTOW and have their eyes opened by MGTOW? Absolutely, yes. It was an awakening into the differences between the genders, but the alt-right explicitly disavows any form of promiscuity.
Not everyone in these groups is in the alt-right, but the alt-right traffics at the intersection between them. There's a wide range of differing and frankly incompatible ideas about government and the social order among these groups, but as it gains power, the alt-right is congealing into a somewhat cohesive ideology. And the reason they matter at this moment in history is that of all the people in the 2016 primaries, only one was the alt-right candidate. And while not everyone who voted for him is in the alt-right, they are his base, his most ardent supporters, and they carried him all the way to the White House.
False. The alt-right is at its core a principled reactionary movement that sees President Trump as literally the last hope for the West. It is, as a result, his greatest critic when he missteps. Unless you want to lump the Donald and other civic nationalists in with the alt-right, which would just be intellectually dishonest.
Next, you'd want to clarify why they're called the alt-right. Alt-right is a term coined by National Policy Institute president, avowed white nationalist, and professional speedbag Richard Spencer. The term is meant as a euphemism, a way of painting a happy face on racism. And that's not an opinion. One of the stated aims of Spencer's organization is the removal of non-whites from American society. And the purpose of rebranding white supremacy with a term like alt-right is so mainstream white people are not made to feel like racists when they vote for racist people with racist policies.
In fact, it would be more accurate to call the alt-right ethno-nationalists or identitarians more than white supremacists. In fact, the whole notion of white supremacy is a lie. Many people in the alt-right believe in white exceptionalism, that each race has different things that it is better at than another race. The core belief of the alt-right is anti-globalism, in that it believes that every race should have the right to live unmolested in their own native countries. Many members, even prominent members of the alt-right, have a great deal of respect for foreign cultures, myself included. I think that Japanese, Chinese, Mayan, Incan, and even African Zulu cultures all are beautiful in their own way and should be preserved in their own countries. There is no way to preserve that if we create or attempt to create a global monoculture.
So every time a journalist writes an article about the dapper fashions of the alt-right and doesn't title it Lipstick on a White Supremacist Pig, that journalist is being a coward and treating a hate group with kid gloves basically because the hate group asked them to. So, you might want to clarify why you put that euphemism in the title of your videos. And, well, you'd have to explain that while the alt-right is racist, they are not only racist. They're also misogynist, anti-feminist, Islamophobic, xenophobic, homophobic, transphobic, classist, ableist, authoritarian, and fiercely anti-intellectual.
Let's go through these really quick as we can. Racist. If you believe that there are inherent differences between the races and their behaviors and cultures is racist, then yes, the alt-right is racist. Misogynist? In what way? Is believing that traditional gender roles are not harmful misogynist? It is believed widely that women benefit society more in their smaller world of homekeeping. Male members of the alt-right acknowledge readily that men are not nearly as good at keeping the home as women are, nor are they nearly as good at child-rearing. This is not a misogynist position, but one based in scientific fact. Anti-feminist? I talked about that already. Islamophobic. No one is afraid of Islam. It is reasonable to not want a dangerous ideology in your country. When a religion has committed, as of today, October 12, 2017, 1,638 Islamic attacks in 57 different countries, resulting in 11,086 people killed, and another 11,366 injured, it is reasonable to condemn that ideology as dangerous and as having anti-Western values. Xenophobic. Again, no one is scared of foreigners. The principle is this: they are equal, they are human, but they should exist unmolested in their native country. They have to go back. They need to stop creating enclaves in Western culture and not assimilating and not integrating. Homophobic. No one is afraid of gays. However, the dangers associated with homosexuality are numerous. STD rates are through the roof in gay communities, causing an undue burden on taxpayers, and when homosexuality is not even remotely understood, reasonable skepticism about its acceptance should be warranted. That's notwithstanding the rates of pedophilia in homosexual communities. Transphobic, same as homosexual, it's not understood. It's not something we have nearly enough information about, and it's something that needs to be further researched. Classist. Most, if not all, of the alt-right is white middle working class. I don't know how classist the average can be. Ableist. What? I mean, believing that you should seek to be the best that you can be is ableist, I guess? Authoritarian. Yeah, it is widely believed that the rule of law should be the supreme law of the land. Absolutely, that is true. Anti-intellectual. Well, this is just beyond the pale. There are hundreds of thousands of texts related to the issues the alt-right discusses, and everyone is encouraged to read them thoroughly. In fact, if you're uneducated about the positions that we talk about, you're called a shill. You're told to go away and read and inform yourself. How is that anti-intellectual? The alt-right encourages the reading of the likes of Plato and Aristotle, Socrates, reading the Bhagavad Gita, reading the Bible, reading Nietzsche and other philosophers. To claim that a movement that prides itself on intellectual underpinnings is disturbing on many levels. But I guess when you believe that knowledge can never truly be attained and men can be women, it might seem anti-intellectual.
So if you just did a find and replace of each instance of alt-right with white supremacist, you'd actually be leaving a lot out. That's not much of a defense for the term alt-right, it just paints a happy face on a bunch of horrible stuff, but it is useful to have a term that refers to the whole cluster, and you don't have the kind of internet pull where if you coined your own term, anyone would know what you're talking about. So you'll just have to promise not to use alt-right as a euphemism. When the alt-right is racist, you will have to call them racist.
Will you do the same for Black Lives Matter and other anti-white groups?
When the alt-right is homophobic, you'll have to call them homophobic. If you're stuck with their term, don't use it the way they want you to. Third, you'd have to cover how to engage with the alt-right, which is actually pretty straightforward. Don't. The reasoning there may not be immediately obvious, especially if you, say, once devoted an entire video to the importance of talking to anti-feminist hate mobs. So you'll have to explain. You have since then learned how such debates with the far right often go, thanks to conversations with people who have more lived experience than you. If some guy on Twitter shoots his mouth off about how, for instance, only precious snowflakes would care about how many black women are getting roles in Hollywood, maybe you push back on that. Maybe the conversation gets heated. Maybe you debunk his arguments, make your points, and he walks away in a huff. For you, the interaction is over. But for folks on the far right, it often isn't. The far right keeps mental lists of people who represent the things they're mad about. The symbol of the liberal media, the symbol of video game feminism, the symbol of trans activism. FYI, these are usually women and people of color. And these people aren't people to them. They're just icons for a thing. And the way they express anger about those things is to attack those people. So while you leave the argument and have a lie down, eat a sandwich, feel better, he maybe vents his frustration by hacking the email of whomever represents black women in Hollywood this week.
This is utter nonsense. Utter, contrite nonsense. Name a single instance of this happening. It doesn't. No one cares enough to hack some icon's profiles. For one, no one in the alt-right is upset that people of color succeed. Not a single one. Their rage rightfully comes in when that person of color only achieved their position as a diversity hire or as a result of affirmative action and the need for more diversity.
This doesn't happen every time, or even most times, but it happens reliably enough that anytime you try and debate with a reactionary, you are gambling with someone else's safety. The purpose of debating these people is not to change their minds, but to stem the flow of lies and bad rhetoric.
Lies and bad rhetoric? Like, I don't know, you can choose your own gender?
The alt-right is always recruiting, always trying to expand its audience. And there are ways to reach their intended audience without engaging them directly. It's not only safer, it's often more effective to cut out the middleman, speak past them, not to them. If your purpose is to actually change the mind of a reactionary...
Why? Why do they need their minds changed in the first place? What is so reviled about their beliefs that they need their minds changed at all? Why is it so repulsive to think that a nation, any nation, should look out for its own people first? Why does that scare you?
Well, doing that right is tricky, and doing it wrong can have serious consequences. So until you know for sure how to change the mind of a reactionary without fucking somebody else's life up, do not engage. Once you've got those 3 bits cleared up, the rest of your announcement is just housekeeping. Because there are a whole lot of topics to discuss, you'll want to keep the videos short and to the point, and you'll have to alternate them with videos in your more usual wheelhouse, or else after a few months of nothing but this, videos would just be 5-minute blocks of sustained screaming. You'll try to release them in batches when the subjects interlock, but you'll also try not to make any promises about your schedule. And you'll have to clarify that anything you say, no matter how insightful or well-researched, is ultimately your opinion, and invite people to expand or push back on your ideas, provided they can do so civilly. And you'll have to be clear that if people are coming to you for solutions, you do not as of now have any. You're not at solutions yet. Maybe you will be by the end of this, but for now, all you know is, if you want to win, you have to understand why you've been losing. And if you want to defeat an enemy, you have to know how your enemy thinks. Then, all that's left to say is, welcome to the alt-right playbook.
But you don't know how the alt-right thinks. You know how you believe it thinks, but you're wrong. Your perspective is from the outside looking in. I'm more than happy to have an interview with you in Innuendo Studios. I'm more than happy to discuss these topics with you. I'm more than happy to discuss these topics with anyone. But I anticipate you, or anyone else, won't do that. This is the fundamental difference between the alt-right and the left. One side is open to meaningful discussion, free of screeching and microaggression. One prefers to live in its bubble and have its views unchallenged. Many in the alt-right were once on the left, but seeing the decay of societal mores pushed them into a reactionary position, and any time they tried to bring it up along the way, seeing it happening, they were told to be quiet and quit being transphobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, ableist, or whatever the buzzword is at the time. These people were once moderates, but beliefs cannot exist in a bubble because they get challenged and they become reformed and more perfect. Like iron in a forge, the heating and cooling makes it stronger, and the end product is better than it ever could have been otherwise. No member on the right would ever say, just don't talk to SJWs or lefties. The right wants this process, this heating and cooling, desperately. It wants more perfect positions. It wants compromise. But the left doesn't want this for their own positions. Because, as you've said repeatedly, don't engage.